before I start talking about the topic in this video, I want to point out that there's not gonna be any cuts in this video. No cuts about audio or any crazy editing. Because I want this to be organic, natural, and honestly, I don't think it would be my style to, do crazy editing and cutting, and I think it feels better this way. I think it feels relaxing, feels like a talk one-to-one, and that's more like most likely what I will be doing for the other videos. So there's gonna be pauses, there's gonna be me repeating words. I have a big problem with repeating words. First of all, because English is not my first language, and second of all, because it's a habit that I have that I don't even realize that I'm doing most of the time. It's something that I'm gonna have to work on, and as time goes on, I will be getting more comfortable with talking in videos. I also want to say that the background gameplay, the Red Dead Redemption gameplay, it's gonna have some weird cuts because I was recording this on my PlayStation 4, and my PlayStation 4 is a bit old now. It has a couple of years, so it doesn't necessarily record gameplay for a very long time. It cuts by itself, and it just saves the video by itself. It used to not have this limit of recording, but with time, the PlayStation has its weird quirks and all that stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be that way, and I'm not gonna edit it. I'm not gonna put anything crazy on the background because I simply don't want to do it. Another thing, I guess, last thing before I start talking about the actual topic. I used to have another channel, but it got deleted. I didn't delete it. YouTube did. So I don't even know why. Honestly, I don't know why YouTube deleted it. So don't ask me because I don't know myself. I made a new channel and I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna upload whatever. I'm gonna upload videos about whatever. I will also upload another video after this one of me just walking on the park and, talking about plants and nerdy stuff. I don't have any particular goal with this channel. I just want to do whatever comes to mind, whatever I feel like. So that's what it's gonna be. Another thing is that I don't know if I said it. I don't think I did. English is not my first language, and I also have I struggle with stuttering sometimes. So you might hear a bit of that on this video. So anyways, to this topic, which is introspection and my critique on psychology. First of all, I want to start with saying that I'm not anti-psychology, but I'm also not pro-pill. It sounds very funny when you say it that way, but I'll explain. I think psychology is amazing, and I think it's, incredible that we humans have discovered and learned so much about our own brains, which are very complex. I find that very interesting, and psychology is very important and one of the greatest developments for society. Now, it does have a lot of flaws, and one of them is the fact that nowadays psychology relies heavy on medication, and I think giving you advice that it's a bit obvious. Well, definitely, I'm not one of these people that thinks that, oh, autism is not real, or you don't have autism, or you don't have ADHD, or any, stuff like this. Even though I have very conservative values, I don't, I don't share that opinion. I do think that there's a lot of over diagnosing, unnecessary diagnosing, and that, you know, one little thing, oh, you have autism and stuff like that. I don't necessarily agree with that. But moving on with medication, well, obviously, this also has to do with the fact that psychology and psychiatry make a lot of money from, selling medications, bringing people back to their sessions, another therapy session, etc., etc. So that's part of the problem as to why there there's this over medication. And, well, you know as a lot of us know, the health industry in the United States is very big. Big in the sense of also expensive and not necessarily affordable for the general person. It's just not. It's just the truth. So, the United States is one of the countries that has the biggest issue with over medication. The United States is the country that medicates itself the most, and it is very sad. Well, first of all, I'm not against medication. I think that it is fine for you to have medication for mental health issues if you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, or, a mental health issue that's actually biological, for example, schizophrenia, or clinical depression, which is a chemical imbalance in your brain. But for the majority of things, we don't need medication, and it's not good for us. First of all, you are depending on it, and it's not bringing you. Now, medication, it's a temporary solution to a long-term problem, because, you know even if you go to a therapist and you get better at the issue that you're trying to target, you're still vulnerable to having this issue again. You're still vulnerable to falling for these things again, whether it's depression, anxiety, because most of these things are, you know, coping mechanisms that we develop because of issues that we have in our with our upbringing, with our childhood, right? So now I will talk a little bit about my own experience. I'm currently 19 years old, but when I was 16, I went through it, right? It was a very hard year for me, especially because it was quarantine. Now this is a whole another topic that would probably be for another video, which I don't even know if I'm gonna make. Thing is, I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but quarantine was horrible for society in general. It affected us a lot, and whoever denies it is definitely being blind on purpose. Quarantine was horrible for the majority of people, including myself, because I'm not the exception, and especially for us, younger people, it was horrible. Well, we were in quarantine for, I think it was about 2 years. Depends on the country, but in the United States, I think it was 2 years, year and a half of quarantine. And like I said, it was a very hard year for me. I was going through really bad depression. And because of things that happened in my school, I ended up, being sent to talk to a school counselor, and eventually this counselor talked to my parents, and they told me that they had to assign me a psychologist, to which they did. So I did therapy for about a year, probably less than a year. Uh, I won't say that it was a bad experience. However, I will say that it wasn't for me, and I don't think it taught me a lot. Now, uh, coming back to the start of this, like I said, I was going through really bad depression, really bad, like rock bottom. The 16 years old for me was like probably the worst so far. Now I'm not very old, like I said, I'm 19, but just saying things how they are. And I started seeing this therapist, this psychologist, and the things that he was telling me, the tips that he was telling me that were supposed to help me were things that I already knew, but I didn't. My real problem was the motivation. I had my motivation was so low. Like I didn't even have any motivation at all. It was really hard for me to do the things that my psychologist was telling me to do. Like exercise, do different activities, try to meet more people. Now, I'm not saying that these things are wrong and that they would not help a person. They would definitely help a person, and he was right for telling me those things, and I knew that I had to do these things to be better. Like I said, the real problem for me was that I did not have any motivation at all to do these things. I didn't have motivation for everything. It was very, very hard for me. And I to be quite honest, I kind of pretended that I was doing better even though I wasn't, because I didn't like going to therapy. I didn't feel like it was helping me. I felt like a lot of things that my therapist was telling me I knew I had to do, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I also didn't feel completely comfortable opening up myself to a stranger. And meanwhile, I knew that this was the psychologist's job. He was not going to judge me, and a good psychologist should not judge you. I simply didn't feel comfortable. It's like I said, it's not for everyone, and it's definitely not necessary. Therapy is not necessary. A lot of people will disagree with me, but it's the truth. I think therapy should be a last resort option, because of introspection, which is the main topic. Now, introspection is having the ability to recognize your emotions, doing some self-analyzing to be better, right? To develop some insight about yourself. And this is something that it's not very talked upon when it comes to psychology. I have barely ever heard a psychologist talk about introspection, and introspection can be so helpful and it can be very valuable. It was something that I had to learn on my own, but I think it's not even near to be taught. In general, I think more people should speak up about introspection and how much it can help you, because I honestly think that the majority of people do not have the ability to be introspective. Some people are more self-aware than others, right? But again, if psychologists taught you introspection, a lot of people would be not only able to get better, but they will also be able to help themselves in the future, right? Because again, you can have depression, you can have anxiety, you can have a lot of these problems, And yeah, you will get better with time. I got better with time. But you're still vulnerable to falling again. You're still vulnerable to having depression again at some point. You're still vulnerable to suffering from anxiety. And for most people, anxiety doesn't actually disappear. You just actually learn to control it, to be better at it, and to come up with solutions so it doesn't control you. So again, the process is different for everyone. Everyone will have a different process of learning introspection and how to be introspective. But for me and in my own experience, I was always a person that overthinks a lot. I overthink a lot and I think too much. Matter of fact, I think way too much. Sometimes I wish that I could think less, right? But this is what we're working with. So I had to do a lot of thinking about my childhood, about my past, about my behavior, noticing my behavior towards others, so that I could be better and better this behavior. And I would like to give credit to myself for, getting out of depression. I definitely think that going to therapy was necessary, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be making this video and giving my opinion after my own experience with therapy. However, I don't think that my therapist necessarily helped me to get out of depression. And I don't think it should be that way, I don't think we should rely on someone to build mental strength, because at the end of the day, it's our mental health, and we should develop skills that we can carry on later so that we can use them when we have mental health problems in the future, so that we can apply them and overall, mature, get better, build experience for later issues, because issues will always arise at some point, especially when it comes to mental health. That's just the way it is. And like I said, I had to do a lot of introspection to get better and to get out of depression. I dare to say that most people can't sit down and to even think what's wrong with them, because everything comes from something, right? All the flaws that we have, they have a background, and usually it has to do with our upbringing during our childhood. A lot of things happen during childhood that they affect us in a way that we carry these habits and these behaviors and these flaws that will stay with us for the rest of our lives, and that we will have to learn to manage, and that we will have to learn to get better at. And so again, with a lot of introspection, I ended up realizing that where these things came from, right? I sat down to think, damn, I'm this way, I have this behavior because of this. This happened during my childhood, or this most likely happened during my childhood, that made me become this, that made me develop this habit, that made me develop this behavior, that made me develop this way of expression with other people, right? And it is different for everyone. In my case, I like to sit down, listen to music, and just think about myself as a person currently, about what I can change, about what I think could be the reason this is happening. And at first, for a lot of people this might seem very hard. For a lot of people might think, oh, how would I know, how could I possibly know what the reason could be for what something is happening to me? But trust me, the more you practice, the more you will realize that you are capable of learning on your own, of finding yourself the answers for the questions that you have, of things that you want to be better at, of behaviors that you want to be better at, of the mental health issues that you might be having. Now, like I said, is it wrong to go to therapy? Should you never go to therapy? No, I don't think this. I just don't think it should be your first option. I think you should try to do a lot of self-analyzing. Try to develop skills on your own. Try to solve it yourself. And it sounds very raw, and it sounds very vague, but that really is just the way that I see it. I really do think that you have to find the answers on your own and try to fix it yourself. Now, if you have tried a lot and you don't see any progress, if you don't think that it's working, if you have been trying a lot and you're still stuck on this hole, you're still tripping on the same rock, that's when I think that you should maybe look for a third opinion, for a second opinion, right? Go through to a specialist and talk about these issues with the specialist. And I think that you should definitely express that you have tried to better yourself, these things, that you have tried to make an effort to fix it on your own. And coming back to the topic of pills, right? Pills are a temporary solution. Medication to mental health problems are a temporary solution. Most of us, we don't need pills for any of the mental health issues that we have, right? Obviously this has to do with the fact that big pharma makes a lot of money out of these things. They make a lot of money out of medication. I don't know if I mentioned it already. I think I did. But pills not only make you dependent, and they give you a lot of side effects, and you basically become addicted to them, but they're also a temporary solution. Because what happens when you run out of pills? What happens when you don't take your pills? You don't want to become dependent on a medication. You want to build skills that will help you make your mental state stronger, and that you can use in the future, instead of medicating people. We should start developing skills and think, okay, well, if I have this issue again, what can I do about it? How can I be better at it? How can I develop behavior or habits that will help me if I have this problem in the future? Because like I said, if you're having mental health issues to the point that you think you have to go to a therapist, they most likely will come back at some point, because that's just the way it is. A lot of things that we struggle with, we will carry for the rest of our lives. And this doesn't mean that it's something wrong. It just what I mean to say is that it doesn't mean that it's something bad, that it will come back, right? If you want to see it in a more positive way, if anything, each time that this problem comes reoccurring, you already have the introspection of what the possible cause of this is, and through that you will come up with skills and a solution that you can use if this problem happens again. I think that's what true psychology should be like. True psychology and true therapy should be about preparing you mentally to overcome a lot of these issues or new issues in the future, and obviously to help you know yourself more. But the person that can do that the most is you. And that's why introspection and self-analyzing and inner insight is so important, because you know yourself more than anyone else. You are the one that has to do a lot of thinking and know yourself truly, and think about your whole life, everything that you have been through. You ultimately, you are the person that has to know yourself in a deep level. I think I think that's the true essence of mental health. Obviously, yes, we have to be there for each other, we have to talk about these issues, but again, this is something very important that I barely ever see anyone talk about, that I barely ever see in psychology. From my experience, my therapist never talked to me about this, and I wanted to share a bit of a talk about this because I find it so valuable and so useful, and it changed my life completely. I'm not a perfect person, I still have a lot of flaws, and I actually struggle a lot mentally. I struggle a lot with my mental health, but introspection has helped me so much find out where the things that are wrong with me come from, what happened during my childhood. Again, I'm not gonna repeat myself too much, but it really helped me, and I think it's something that we should teach people widely to be better as society. And the process of introspection is gonna be different. It's different for some people. I have my own way of doing it. You know, for some people it might be sitting at nature in silence. For other people it might be listening to music. For other people it might be reading a book. For other people it might be writing. For other people it might be multitasking while you're thinking. But this is something that you have to discover yourself. It is also very spiritual, to be honest. It's a very spiritual connection with yourself that you have to do, that you have to try. That, you know, it might come spontaneously, but it doesn't have to. That's the thing. We can talk about this and we can encourage it on people so that they can try to discover it, and then they can learn how to do it, and that they can practice it more and be better at it. Now this is crazy. I have been talking for 27 minutes now, almost half an hour. I don't want to make this video too long, so I think I will leave it at that. I truly hope that whatever I said taught you something, or that at least it inspired you in some way. And if it did, well, thank you for listening to me. And that's it. That's all for today. Sending big hugs to anyone that's watching this. And well, stay strong. Carry on.